Tonight on ABC News Live Prime, National Guard showdown. The White House's efforts to deploy National Guard troops to Democrat-led cities have prompted a legal showdown between the administration and state and local officials, with 200 National Guard soldiers currently on their way from Texas to Chicago against the wishes of the city's mayor and the governor of Illinois, all at the orders of President Trump, who calls it a necessary part of his crime crackdown. Negotiations over President Trump's Gaza peace plan are underway in Egypt on the eve of the second anniversary of the October 7th Hamas attacks. The president is signaling confidence.
We have a really good chance of making a deal, and it'll be a lasting deal. We want to have peace. This is beyond Gaza. Gaza is a big deal, but this is really peace in the Middle East.
I'm in panel in Tel Aviv as the most important talks to try and end the almost 2-year-long war in Gaza get underway in Egypt.
So-called conversion therapy, or efforts to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity, now widely discredited by major American medical organizations, banned by half the United States. But tomorrow the Supreme Court will hear a major challenge to those laws aimed at protecting LGBTQ Americans. Are the state laws silencing the speech of therapists who believe people can be changed? That's tonight's Prime Focus. A wild weekend across the NFL, leaving no undefeated teams on the roster.
And the last of the unbeatens has fallen in the NFL.
Leading into tonight's matchup between the Chiefs and the Jaguars, we'll talk to our favorite Monday evening quarterback, Coach Herm Edwards, about who he thinks are the real winners and losers so far this season. And speaking of football, two-time Super Bowl winner Eli Manning and one of Hollywood's favorite leading men, Glenn Powell, they're teaming up for the new Hulu series, Chad Powers. The three of us sit down to talk about their careers, what comes next, and what each one thinks about the other's talents, from on the field to in front of the camera.
I think he definitely nailed it, and Peyton and I were hard on him.
They were super specific about what I was doing. Like, even like you were the one that was saying, like, hey, what's your sort of superstition? Like, are you licking your fingers? Do you wipe it on the towel?
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. It is a busy Monday night. We're tracking charges former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez now faces for a stabbing over the weekend, and the latest on a possible breakthrough between Israel and Hamas. But we do begin with the wide-ranging implications of a government shutdown and the legal battle over President Trump's deployment of the National Guard to Democratic-led states. The state of Illinois and the city of Chicago are suing the Trump administration. Governor J.B. Pritzker called the potential deployment Trump's invasion. Hundreds of Texas National Guard troops arrived tonight. All this comes hours after a federal judge in Oregon, who was appointed by President Trump, blocked him from deploying the National Guard to quell protests outside a Portland ICE facility, saying the president's claims about Portland were simply untethered to the facts, and that the federal government could not send the Oregon National Guard or troops from any other state to Portland. We have Senator Cruz standing by for the latest state of play on the shutdown, but we do begin with Rachel Scott on all the fast-moving developments on Trump's National Guard deployment.
Tonight, on President Trump's orders, a plane carrying 200 National Guard soldiers now heading from Texas to Chicago against the wishes of the city's mayor and the governor of Illinois.
Let me be clear. Donald Trump is using our service members as political props and as pawns in his illegal effort to militarize our nation's cities.
The president calls it a necessary part of his crime crackdown. But Governor J.B. Pritzker, who was fighting back in court, calls it an unconstitutional invasion of the state of Illinois.
Trump and the thuggery that his agents have brought has actively made us less safe.
The president tonight says that's just not true.
It's like a war zone. And then I listen to the governor and the mayor get up and say how they have it under control. They don't.
Just last week at Quantico, in front of hundreds of military leaders, the president saying America's cities could be training grounds for troops. They've been patrolling Washington, D.C. for weeks, with President Trump now planning to put them to use in Chicago, Memphis, and Portland, Oregon, where 200 soldiers from California arrived last night.
I believe that the Portland people are scared. You look at what's happened with Portland over the years. It's a burning hellhole.
But over the weekend, a judge President Trump appointed himself says when it comes to Portland, the president's assessment is, quote, simply untethered to the facts, blocking the deployment of the Guard in the city. The president has focused on a group of protesters that have camped outside an ICE facility in Portland. But Judge Karen Emmergut says those protesters are not significantly violent or disruptive, adding, "This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law." Portland Police Chief Bob Day telling our Trevor Ault the protests are confined to a sliver of the city.
It is a city block in a beautiful city that's 145 square miles, so it is fairly contained, but there are some challenges mitigating it down there.
But it is basically contained in a single city block.
Yes, it's just one city block.
Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. Rachel, what other options is the president weighing as the legal battles play out?
Well, they are moving forward with the appeals process, but tonight the president says he is considering invoking the Insurrection Act, using emergency powers that would allow him to go around the courts to deploy the National Guard to both Chicago and Portland, Lindsay.
Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. Now to the government shutdown entering its second week. Millions of Americans are being affected. And tonight, the transportation secretary is sounding an alarm about air traffic controllers, saying some of them are calling out sick. Meanwhile, there's no sign Republicans and Democrats are any closer to a compromise. Senator Ted Cruz will give us the latest in a moment. But first, Jay O'Brien reports from Capitol Hill.
Tonight, as the government shutdown drags into its sixth day, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy sounding the alarm, saying as air traffic controllers worry about when they'll next get paid, the department is now seeing a slight uptick in sick calls around the country.
What they think about as they're controlling our airspace is, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How do I make my car payment?
Trump presided over the longest government shutdown in American history in his first term, 35 days. And now Democrats are refusing to fund the government unless Republicans agree to repeal Medicaid cuts and extend health care subsidies to prevent insurance premiums from rising for millions of Americans. Republicans won't budge. The House isn't even in session this week, though members of Congress are still collecting their paychecks. The Democratic leader saying it's on Trump to break the logjam.
He's in charge. His party holds majorities across the government. So Americans naturally and correctly believe the burden is on him to fix this mess.
President Trump tonight implying negotiations are underway.
We have a negotiation going on right now with the Democrats that could lead to very good things.
But tonight, Schumer denying any talk, saying Trump's claim isn't true. But if he's finally ready to work with Democrats, we'll be at the table.
Jay O'Brien joins us now from Capitol Hill, and the president doubled down on the threat to fire public workers. What did he say?
Yeah, remember, Lindsay, the president has repeatedly said that the longer this shutdown drags on, his administration will enact mass firings of federal workers across the government. He reiterated that today in the Oval Office. Some days back, administration officials signaled that those firings would begin this week. They have not started yet. But again, the president saying that if this continues, they will start those mass firings. Lindsay.
Jay O'Brien for us. Thanks so much, Jay. For more on a busy Monday evening, we are joined by Chair of the Senate Commerce Committee, Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, thanks so much for joining us, as always. We have a lot to get to. It is day 6 of the shutdown. Both sides are digging in. Any signs of progress at all?
Look, this will end when the Democrats decide they're willing to reopen the government. I mean, we're 6 days into the Schumer shutdown, and it's driven really by two things. Number one, the Democrats are fighting to provide free taxpayer health care to illegal aliens. That is not what the American people want, and yet Democrats have shown they're willing to shut down the government to try to get it. But ultimately, Lindsay, it's not even about that policy demand. This is all about politics and protecting Chuck Schumer. Several months ago, Chuck Schumer and Democrats worked with Republicans to keep the government open, and he almost lost his job. The angry left-wing base of the Democrat Party was furious with him. And so we have a government shutdown right now because Schumer is trying to act tough. He's scared of being primaried from the left by AOC. And so this is Chuck Schumer saying, see, I hate Donald Trump as much as you do. And unfortunately, 43 other Democrats joined him and forced a shutdown. This will end. Tonight, I'm going to go and vote to reopen the government. Republicans are going to vote to reopen the government. And this will end when the Democrats decide they put on a temper tantrum long enough and they're willing to turn the lights back on.
Just for academic debate and discussion here, because you're saying that this is really showmanship by the Democrats. But back in 2013, you staged a lengthy protest to defund Obamacare, holding the Senate floor for 21 hours and 19 minutes. It ultimately helped lead to a 16-day government shutdown. You were blasted back then, even by some of your party's leaders, for many of the same reasons that Democrats are being scorned today. The Democrats, by all accounts, feels passionately about the Affordable Care Act subsidies, as you felt back in 2013 about defunding the Affordable Care Act. So if no one is listening, is a government shutdown an appropriate tactic?
Well, listen, in 2013, it was fundamentally different, because what had happened in 2013 is the Republican House of Representatives had passed legislation funding the entirety of the federal government, but declining to fund Obamacare. And it was Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer that forced the shutdown, because they insisted they would not pass the continuing resolution the House had passed. And they forced a shutdown. And by the way, I would point out, when I did a 21-hour filibuster against Obamacare, the principal point I raised is that Obamacare was going to raise people's premiums enormously. Just this weekend, the Washington Post wrote an editorial acknowledging that Obamacare, the so-called Affordable Health Care Act, did not produce affordable health care, but instead dramatically increased health insurance premiums. I am all for reforms that lower premiums, that increase competition, that give consumers more choice. That's what I was fighting for in 2013. That's what I'm fighting for today. What the Democrats in the Senate are doing right now is fundamentally different. In this instance, the House of Representatives passed a clean continuing resolution, a bill that says, let's just continue what we were funding yesterday, let's fund tomorrow.
Let's talk about your podcast, The Verdict with Ted Cruz. You made national headlines for saying this about the FCC chair, making those comments directed at Disney ABC about the Kimmel Show. Let's listen.
We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
Yeah.
And I got to say, that's right out of Goodfellas. That's right out of a mafioso coming into a bar going, nice bar you have here. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. I think it is unbelievably dangerous for government to put itself in the position of saying, we're going to decide what speech we like and what we don't, and we're going to threaten to take you off air if we don't like what you're saying.
Since then, Kimmel Show has returned to the air. Brendan Carr has agreed to testify before the committee that you chair. I'm curious, have you spoken with President Trump since you made those comments? Have you faced any blowback in your own party?
I haven't faced blowback. In fact, a lot of folks said they agreed with what I said. I believe in free speech, and I believe in free speech whether it is conservatives or whether it is liberals. During the Biden administration, there was an effort at the FCC to go after Fox News and to go after Fox News, threatening to take away their license. And I led the fight against it, and we stopped it. In fact, President Biden nominated a radical nominee named Gigi Sohn to the FCC, and the Senate rejected her nomination in significant part because we believed she would do this same thing, abuse the power of the FCC to go after and try to silence conservative voices she disagreed. And so in this instance, listen, I have a lot of disagreements with Jimmy Kimmel. I think he's no longer funny. I think he's just angry and screams at Donald Trump every night, and that's why his viewership has gone down. But I don't think government ought to be forcing a comedian off the air. I don't think that's true, whether it is a left-wing comedian or right-wing comedian. That's not the government's role. And so I said what I believe, and I think an awful lot of other Americans do too.
Over the weekend, President Trump posted on Truth Social criticizing Al Sharpton and saying, without evidence, that the president of NBC is afraid to take him off the air. He then said the FCC should look into the license of NBC. Your committee, of course, has oversight over the FCC. What do you make of more threats from the president targeting media companies that he disagrees with?
Yeah, listen, I don't think the FCC is going to be pulling stations' licenses because they disagree with what the hosts are saying. Now, I think it is unfortunate that MSNBC is so far left, and I think their viewership is quite low as a result of that. And so I think market forces are important, and check it in. Going back for a minute to late-night comedians. I love late-night comedy. I grew up watching SNL. I used to love the late-night shows. And to be clear, a good late-night comedian makes fun of both sides. I think Republicans are certainly fair game. I'm fair game. President Trump is fair game. The problem is when Trump became president, the late night hosts got so angry that their shows shifted to just being left-wing partisan rants. That's not funny and it's not interesting to watch. And so I'm perfectly fine if people turn off their TVs and they end up pulling off partisan hosts, whether Al Sharpton or Jimmy Kimmel. I just don't think it should be government forcing them to do it.
Senator Ted Cruz, always appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it.
Overseas now, critical talks on a Gaza peace plan are now underway in Egypt on the eve of the second anniversary of Hamas's October 7th attack. Late today, President Trump signaled confidence, saying, "I really think we're going to have a deal." Let's bring in our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, in Tel Aviv for us. Ian, what more are you learning about those talks?
I think the crucial thing here is that President Trump's applying real pressure on Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you've got this international coalition of countries that at least had relations with Hamas, applying equal amounts of pressure to there. So there is a sense that this is potentially a game-changing moment. You've got these indirect talks now underway in Egypt, phase one, which the president hopes could be agreed as early as this week, although they're not setting an actual deadline. That would mean a ceasefire, the release of 48 hostages, 20 of whom are alive, and hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, and a partial withdrawal of Israeli troops. The key sticking point is going to be phase two, which calls for Hamas to disarm and relinquish power. But I think what's really different this time is that President Trump's personally engaged, and there's unprecedented international pressure on both sides to try and make this deal happen. Lindsay?
And Ian, large protests broke out over Europe this weekend in support of activists on flotillas who were intercepted by Israel during their attempt to bring aid into Gaza. One of them, of course, was climate activist Greta Thunberg. What are some activists saying about how they were treated?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, those protests were enormous. It's estimated that in Amsterdam alone, 30% of the population came out. You had this kind of sea of people supportive of ending the war, supportive of the Palestinians there. Yet we've heard a number of claims now by those activists who've been held for a number of days here in Israel before they were deported, saying that they'd been mistreated, that they had been beaten. Greta Thunberg talked about being forced to kiss the Israeli flag. Now, the Israelis have vehemently denied this, so it will be a case of she says and he says. But I think there's also a sense that they really did manage to capture the public imagination around the world. And already there's another flotilla on the way to try and break what they see as a siege of Gaza. Lindsay?
Ian Pannell for us in Tel Aviv. Ian, thanks so much. Former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez is facing a felony charge for an alleged altercation with a 69-year-old truck driver. Both men are still hospitalized. Here's ABC's Matt Rivers with the details.
Tonight, the former NFL quarterback who nearly led the New York Jets to the Super Bowl is facing a felony charge after a bloody dispute allegedly over parking.
We're lucky that no one's dead right now as a result of this incident.
Mark Sanchez, now a Fox Sports analyst, seen here bloodied in surveillance video obtained by the New York Post, showing the former NFL star clutching his chest, stumbling through downtown Indianapolis moments after an altercation left him in critical condition with multiple stab wounds. Shortly after 12:30 a.m. Saturday night, police say the 38-year-old Sanchez approached Perry Toll, a 69-year-old delivery truck driver in the middle of his shift, about where the victim parked. Toll, who says Sanchez smelled of alcohol, alleges Sanchez shoved him and prevented him from calling for help. Toll telling police he feared he was in physical danger, pepper spraying Sanchez in the face. According to police, when the former quarterback advanced again, Toll thought, "This guy is trying to kill me," and stabbed Sanchez multiple times. Toll suffering a severe laceration to the side of his face. You can see his injuries in this hospital photo obtained by ABC affiliate WRTV. Sanchez telling investigators he did not know who did this to him or where it happened. And tonight, in a statement in part, "This is a deeply distressing time. Mark remains under medical care and is focused on recovery and the legal process."
Mark Sanchez was involved in an incident that, to be honest, we're all still trying to wrap our heads around.
Sanchez charged with felony battery, public intoxication, and unlawful entry of a motor vehicle.
If you come into our city, commit violence, we will use all the tools at our disposal to hold you accountable.
Linsey, Sanchez has posted bond, prosecutors choosing to upgrade that battery charge after reviewing surveillance video, witness statements, and the extent of the victim's medical condition. And that felony charge, if convicted, carries a sentence of 1 to 6 years.
Lindsay?
Significant time there, Matt. Thank you. There is an investigation tonight into a massive fire that destroyed the waterfront home of a South Carolina judge. 3 people were hurt. The judge was not at home at the time. Our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katersky, has the latest.
Tonight, authorities have just revealed this inferno at the waterfront home of a South Carolina judge appears to be an accident.
You can hear the thing burning.
There were fears Judge Diane Goodstein was targeted because of her rulings from the bench. South Carolina's chief judge even asking for extra security. But investigators now say at this time there is no evidence to indicate the fire was intentionally set. Video shows Goodstein's Edisto Island home fully engulfed.
We have a 3-story elevated structure fully engulfed.
Black plumes seen billowing along the shoreline.
Be advised that Edisto Beach has a structure fire with entrapments.
At the time, the judge was walking on the beach, but her husband and 2 others had to escape the fire by jumping into the marsh, rescuers reaching them by kayak. Goodstein's husband, a former state senator, airlifted to the hospital.
Aaron Katersky joins us now. Aaron, has the investigation uncovered the cause of the fire?
Not yet, Lindsay. The investigation is still ongoing and active, according to the South Carolina Law Enforcement Department. But at this point, they say it does appear to be more accident than arson. Lindsay?
Aaron Katersky for us. Thanks so much, Aaron. A federal judge has denied the Justice Department's request to delay proceedings in the deportation case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The Justice Department blamed the government shutdown, but the judge said she felt duty-bound to continue the case given its importance and the questions it raises about deportation policies. Abrego Garcia was deported in error to El Salvador last March, then returned to the U.S. in June. Now the government is seeking to deport him to a different country. His attorney spoke to our Kira Phillips earlier today about the fears Abrego Garcia has about being deported once again.
The government of Eswatini has made very clear that they understand that the mission is not to hold people, it's just to redeport them to their countries of origin. Mr. Abrego Garcia was tortured in the infamous CCOT prison when he was first sent there back in March and April of this year. And if he's sent back to El Salvador, it would be completely illegal, whether that's directly to El Salvador by means of a layover in southern Africa.
Another hearing is scheduled for Friday. Tonight, there's a massive rescue operation near the top of the world. Hundreds of hikers trapped by a winter storm near Mount Everest. Now the race against time to get them to safety. Marcus Moore now with the latest on the efforts.
Tonight, in the shadow of Mount Everest, rescuers are racing to reach hundreds of hikers stranded after a freak blizzard slammed the region. This video showing the harsh conditions at one of the campsites, snow covering tents. At one point, up to 1,000 people were stranded. According to state media, rescue teams and hundreds of villagers managing to get around 350 of the hikers down from the mountain. This woman says she hiked 5 hours through thigh-deep snow to get out, calling the thunder and lightning that came with the snow truly frightening. At more than 29,000 feet, Everest is the highest peak in the world, straddling China, Nepal, and Tibet. The hikers are stuck near the eastern face, the Tibetan side, at 16,000 feet. The incident comes amid a powerful weather system that pummeled the region with blizzard conditions and torrential rain that triggered deadly mudslides and flash floods.
Lindsay, a terrifying few days for so many there, but the conditions are improving and rescuers hope to have everyone out soon. Lindsay.
Marcus, thank you. And we are following a developing story tonight. The Hollywood Burbank Airport in California is now operating without any traffic controllers. This is a warning right from the FAA. San Diego controllers are currently handling the air traffic for now. Flights are experiencing heavy delays averaging 2 hours and 30 minutes. Air traffic controllers are calling out in greater numbers due to the government shutdown. The Federal Aviation Administration anticipates the airport will be without air traffic controllers for the next several hours. Coming up, the Trump administration signs off on new vaccine recommendations, the suggestions for childhood vaccinations, and the COVID shot. Many states have banned conversion therapy for those who are LGBTQ. Meet the people who are ready to challenge state laws before the Supreme Court, laws they say are silencing the speech of counselors and therapists who believe in the therapy. And a startup wants to use satellites to reflect sunlight to solar powers, why astronomers are raising the alarm. Welcome back, everyone. So-called conversion therapy, or efforts to change a person's sexual orientation or gender identity, has been widely discredited by major American medical organizations. Half the states have banned it. But on Tuesday, the Supreme Court will hear a major challenge to those laws aimed at protecting LGBTQ Americans. Are the state laws silencing the speech of therapists who believe gays, lesbians, and transgender people can be changed? Our David Muir reports now from Colorado.
Like, she's just clearly our girly little girl.
For Colorado mom Erin Lee and her daughter Chloe, it was a defining moment many families face.
All 12-year-olds go through kind of that identity crisis where they're figuring themselves out, and, puberty just started.
And with puberty, a quiet struggle inside Chloe had given way to a startling surprise for her parents.
She had already made up this, I'm going to go by Toby now, and I'm ready to cut my hair, and I don't want to wear girls' clothes anymore.
So what did you do? What did you tell her?
We knew she was not a boy who was trapped in the wrong body. We thought we have to talk to a professional so we know what to say. Because
a mental health provider.
A mental health provider. Because if, in fact, she's just experiencing normal distress over her sex, we don't want to push her further into this trans identity.
They just told me the college fair is next Wednesday.
Chloe's exploration of identity is a rite of passage familiar to many teens. 1 in 4 American high schoolers say they are gay, lesbian, or bisexual. 3% identify as transgender, and another 2% report questioning their gender. Among those, many say they experience sadness and hopelessness. Some contemplate suicide. Chloe was one of them.
She just wanted someone who would talk to her about what she was going through, and this counselor was dodging the issue entirely, and that was making our daughter worse.
And you think that's a direct result of Colorado's law?
Oh, I know it is.
That law is a ban on so-called conversion therapy, or the effort by a licensed therapist to attempt to change a person's identity during treatment. 27 states restrict the practice, and Erin says it's had a dangerous chilling effect. Colorado's Attorney General Phil Weiser sees it differently.
Making you feel bad about who you are, pressuring you to be someone else, that's not legitimate therapy. The medical consensus is clear. That's why it's banned here in Colorado on a bipartisan basis.
The Colorado minor conversion therapy law says licensed therapists are not allowed to try to change behaviors or gender expressions, or try to eliminate or reduce same-sex attraction. But therapists are allowed to provide acceptance, support, and understanding as a child develops.
Does it stop a therapist from helping a child better align with their biological sex, if that's what they want?
This law allows children to be their best authentic selves, whatever it is. A therapist cannot pressure and harm a young person by saying who you say you are is not okay.
Either way.
Either way.
But critics say it's effectively a gag order, claiming the state is censoring therapists, allowing them only to encourage living openly as gay or lesbian or push them into gender transitions. Kaylee Childs has been a licensed therapist in Colorado Springs for nearly 10 years, providing what she calls faith-informed counseling.
Do you practice conversion therapy?
What I do is I welcome people into the office, and they come in here and we have a conversation.
Alleging the conversion therapy ban violates her right to free speech, Childs sued Colorado in federal court.
So what is it that you believe you want to say but can't say under this law?
If someone comes into the office and they say, I am a biological male, and I have been living and presenting as a female for a while now. Those are the clients who I cannot have a full conversation with.
She says she's had to turn away clients fearing a possible $5,000 fine. But the state insists it's not clear Childs poses any conflict with the law.
The statute is broad, overarching language, and it prevents me from doing what I want to do with clients. Minors who are coming to me voluntarily of their own free will, who have goals that the state has forbidden, they can't come and have the same conversation with me that they could before this law.
Hanging over the case is decades of medical consensus that conversion therapy is ineffective and even harmful.
What does the science say about the effectiveness of conversion therapy?
that there is none.
Dr. Clinton Anderson, a trained psychologist, spent more than 30 years studying mental health care for LGBTQ people at the American Psychological Association.
What happens is that people do develop, their sexuality emerges, their gender emerges. Those changes happen naturally. If you are trying to make them change and they're not going to be successful, then the distress they bring into the therapy gets compounded by their concern about being a failure.
An estimated 700,000 LGBT adults in the U.S. have received conversion therapy. Half were subjected to the practice as adolescents.
The trauma of conversion therapy can last a lifetime.
Matthew Shurka calls himself a survivor of 4 conversion therapists over 5 years. It began when he was 16 after sharing feelings of sexual attraction to other boys with his parents. His father sought out licensed therapists. Some said they could cure him.
They said that I was an easy case, that I should start to see my heterosexuality come back within 6 weeks. My father made this situation life or death. He really felt that he was saving my life.
Shurka was told a key part of treatment would be no contact with female family members, his 2 sisters and his mother.
That lasted 3 years. I had no relationship to them.
How much of that decision on his part and your part rest upon the fact that this was a educated, licensed clinical practitioner?
All of it.
And in one instance was even coached as a teenager to use Viagra to help intimacy with women.
Maybe I was able to perform on that specific evening, but the harm that I was doing to my mental self was at times felt irreversible. And that is when I knew that suicide may be an option for me, because I knew I wasn't changing.
In 2019, he testified in Colorado about his experience, urging lawmakers to adopt a conversion therapy ban.
Any therapist can share their opinion on anything. That is their freedom of speech. But when it comes to a course of treatment, that's professional speech. I was given a treatment to cure my homosexuality that had no basis in any scientific finding.
Sound science or not, Aaron believes the law still runs afoul of the First Amendment.
The law, as I very clearly, it's very clearly written. And as I interpret it, it prevents counselors from being able to help kids through their gender confusion. They can only help them into it.
My parents never really tried to address it.
And Chloe, now 16 and more comfortable as a cisgender girl, is speaking out about her experience.
I felt a lot of shame and despair that seemed absolutely inexplicable. But now I understand. It's because they were right. I'm not a boy. And I was just really, really confused.
A debate over how best to help developing teens, pitting free speech for counselors against a state's push for medical regulation.
We know that young kids right now are hurting. One of the ways we protect young people is we let them have autonomy about who they are.
Quite a debate. Our thanks to Devin Dwyer for that. The Supreme Court will hear arguments in the case tomorrow and are expected to deliver an opinion in the spring. Coming up, the tense standoff between the Trump administration and 9 of the country's top universities after the administration gave them a choice last week. Want preferential access to federal funds? Then eliminate your DEI initiatives. And the new guidance to pediatricians to help prevent thousands of peanut allergies each year. The headline here, most parents don't need to wait to introduce infants to foods containing peanuts. Welcome back, everyone. The struggle between states, the Trump administration, and top universities continues to grow more tense after the administration sent letters last week to universities asking, in effect, if you want preferential access to federal funds, then eliminate your DEI initiatives. More of those demands are in tonight's By the Numbers. Last week, these 9 schools received the Trump administration's memo, which demanded they ban the use of race, sex, and religion in hiring and admissions in exchange for that preferential access to funds. Another demand was that they freeze tuition for 5 years and also require applicants to take a standardized admissions test like the SAT. Schools must also agree to cap enrollment of foreign students to 15%. No easy feat when universities often require foreign students and their families to pay the full price of tuition. As schools have already learned, a fight with the Trump administration can mean billions of dollars in grants withheld. Columbia University reached an agreement in July to pay $200 million to resolve multiple investigations into alleged violations of federal anti-discrimination laws. And the University of Pennsylvania, one of the schools which received the latest memo, also reached a deal with the White House in July to recoup $175 million in federal funds to resolve alleged Title IX violations regarding trans athletes. And joining us now to discuss the current standoff between the state's administration and universities is President of the American Council on Education, Ted Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us. So your organization responded to the memo by saying such pressure from the administration was wholly inappropriate and threatening to core concepts of academic freedom. Elaborate on that for us.
Well, you enumerated just a few of these issues at the jump, and to require institutions to give a standardized test, to define merit according to that standardized test. I think that makes it very, very hard for institutions to do one of the fundamental things it does, pick who it teaches. Sure, the law is clear that we can't use race, got that. We're working on that, but the administration has gone further, banning the use of any sort of measure that isn't a standardized test. We think that that's a usurpation of a fundamental role of universities.
And the administration says that it can withhold federal benefits if institutions don't sign this compact, as the administration calls it. Do we know what benefits might be withheld?
Well, it's they're offering it on the other side that you'll have preferential treatment, which we also don't know. But we think that that means that there will be preferential treatment for grant proposals that are levied out by the Department of Education, for example. It's odd that on the one hand, the admission requirements are all about so-called merit. And these favorable considerations for grant are based on essentially towing a political line.
Governor Newsom of California wrote on X that Californian universities that sign on will lose billions in state funding. The University of Southern California was one of the schools to receive the memo. Do you blame the governor for putting schools between a rock and a hard place here?
I think he's meeting fire with fire. I think that we have to always look for, what's in the middle. There are certainly things in the compact that we've worked on for years, making admissions fairer and clearer, reducing costs, creating ideological diversity on our campuses. But to do it in this draconian way, I think, invites the kind of response that the governor has issued. The answer is in the middle. How can we work together to do these things that we know will make higher education better and stronger?
And so I guess I'm half asking for your prediction as far as what the 9 current schools received would do, and also really if you were at the head of one of these universities, how you would handle it.
The administration has asked in the final sentence of the letter for proposed suggestions from revision. So, I would certainly take them up on that, but I don't have much faith that they're going to change the fundamental outlines here, and I would say no. I would say no to this particular compact.
Even if you would lose a lot of money?
Even if I would lose a lot of money.
President of the American Council on Education, Ted Mitchell, we thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Coming up, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was just announced. We'll tell you the fundamental findings from researchers, including 2 Americans that solved a mystery about how the human immune system functions. And there was no shortage of NFL upsets on Sunday. ESPN analyst Coach Herm Edwards is here to break it down, what went right for some teams and horribly wrong for others. The new guidance regarding introducing peanuts to infants, why a solar startup is causing major controversy, and the #1 movie at the box office might just be what's on your wish list. These stories and more in tonight's Rundown. The Trump administration has signed off on the recommendations voted on by the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee a little over 2 weeks ago. MMRV vaccines for measles, mumps, rubella, and chickenpox are now no longer recommended as a combo shot given around 12 months. Instead, all first doses should be 2 separate shots, one with measles, mumps, rubella, and the other with chickenpox. COVID vaccines are now listed as individual-based decision-making, which means it's up to the patient and their doctor. Many major insurers have signaled they would continue to cover the cost at least through 2026. Rite Aid has shuttered all of its stores after more than 6 decades in business. Despite its long history in the pharmacy industry, Rite Aid has faced mounting financial challenges in recent years. The company most recently filed for bankruptcy protection in May, just 8 months after emerging from a previous Chapter 11 filing in September of 2024. 3 scientists were awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine for their discovery concerning immune tolerance in humans. Their research revealed how the body's immune system targets harmful cells but spares healthy ones. It has spurred research in the development of treatments for cancer and other autoimmune diseases. The trio was awarded about $1.2 million for winning the prize and will be honored at a celebration in December. Starting foods containing peanuts between 4 and 6 months can lower a baby's risk of developing a peanut allergy by more than 80%, according to research. Now a new study says that if this advice is adopted widely, it could help prevent thousands of peanut allergies each year. Peanut allergy now affects about 2% of U.S. children, up from roughly 4% in the late 1990s, making it the most common childhood food allergy, according to the authors. A California startup called Reflect Orbital has received regulatory approval to launch a demo satellite next year to reflect the sun's rays onto precise locations on Earth. The company plans to launch 4,000 of those satellites by 2030, but the plan is being criticized by stargazing astronomers who believe it could hinder their exploration of the cosmos here on Earth because they rely on dark skies to track interstellar objects. The majority of members of the American Astronomical Society say their work would be impacted. The company said they will work with the astronomical community to mitigate any potential impacts. And Taylor Swift's film Time, with the release of her new album, is a hit, debuting at #1 at the box office this past weekend. The film, titled Official Release Party of a Showgirl, was shown at AMC theaters across the country for 3 days and ended the weekend with more than $33 million in ticket sales. Swift's album, The Life of a Showgirl, is her 12th studio album. Time now for Monday Evening Quarterback, looking back on the football weekend that was and what's still to come. Joining us once again is ESPN analyst and former NFL head coach Herm Edwards. Coach, thanks so much for taking the time, as always. Let's start with the college matchups. Preseason 1 and 2, Texas and Penn State both lost matchups that they were supposed to easily win due to quarterback woes and have dropped from the top 25 rankings. Is this season turning into one of inflated quarterback expectations?
I don't know that so much. I just think this is college football in a nutshell. I was fortunate enough to coach in college football, and you have young people that play this game called football, and you never know the emotions of your football team. Obviously, if your last name is Manning, there's a lot of pressure on you, right? He's still a young quarterback, and I think he's got a lot of room to grow. But we get all involved. It's a week-to-week thing when you watch a football game. And as soon as you think you're pretty good, all of a sudden somebody hits you in your nose and you go, well, maybe we're not that good, right? That's just part of it.
And it was an eventful weekend for sure in the NFL. There are now no undefeated teams left after both the Bills and my Eagles lost over the weekend. Buffalo ended their 26 home game winning streak, which is an NFL record, by the way, after losing to the Patriots thanks to several turnovers. And Philly blew a 14-point lead to fall to the Broncos after a game-winning field goal late in the fourth quarter. Should either team be beating themselves up after coming up short?
Well, I think if you're Philadelphia, their first 4 wins, you were scratching your head and going, how did they win these games? Because they weren't connecting. They weren't clicking on offense. And it showed up this last week. They didn't have balance. All of a sudden, they became a passing team. When Saquon Barkley only touches the ball 6 times as a runner, that's never a good number for him, right? And then you made light of it. The Eagles had a lead, and all of a sudden, it got away from them. And so this is probably a good check for the Eagles. Okay, we lost a football game. It's okay. Not a division game, not a conference game. We'll be okay. And from here, they've got to build on it.
And Flavio, my floor director here, long-suffering Jets fan, poor guy. Also, another tough weekend. They're still winless this season after getting steamrolled by the Cowboys yesterday. What changes do they need to make to get some offense going?
Well, look, it starts with the quarterback, obviously, and I'm not blaming it all on the quarterback, but it really starts with him. And look, they have what they have. You don't get any new players. You're not getting any new coaches. They got to figure it out. And it's tough when you get off to a start like this. You got a new head coach. He's trying to implement discipline. He's trying to implement a cohesion of a football team. These guys got to win a game, because here's the problem. When you start losing games, after a while, you don't think you can win a game. So they need to win badly. And that'll get more energy with the players and obviously the fan base. The fans didn't expect a lot out of them this year, but I didn't expect they'd be 0-5 right now.
And rapid fire for tonight's game that's just about to get underway. Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Who's your pick tonight?
Well, I'm going with the Chiefs, right? This is a big game for the Jaguars, by the way. It's a big game. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, Jaguars, they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs. This is normal for the Kansas City Chiefs. They play good when the lights are really bright. So until Patrick Mahomes loses to Jacksonville, which he has not done in his career, I'm going with the Chiefs.
And what's the biggest surprise of the season so far?
Oh, I think the Colts. I think the Indianapolis Colts are playing good football. No one anticipated that, right? And you say the Colts, you say, oh, the Colts? Yeah, the Colts are playing really good football, offensively and defensively. There has been some surprise starts by some teams, but there's a lot of football left. That's what I love football. Every week, there's a different emotion, right? There's a different emotion. Look, I'm invested in Texas. I have 2 daughters at the University of Texas.
Oh, that's right. You're writing those checks to Texas.
Yeah, so I'm hooking them horns, and I'm going, come on, boys. We got to figure this thing out.
All right, speaking of Texas, because there is some Manning royalty there, of course, I had the chance to talk with Eli Manning and Glenn Powell about their new series on Hulu, Chad Powers, where Powell disguises himself to see if he can get onto a college team. Eli had this to say about how the new name, image, and likeness rules have changed the game for walk-ons. Let's take a look.
We wanted to do a show on walk-ons and just the history of walk-ons, the importance around college football. And so now, walk-ons are kind of becoming a little less important or relevant just with NIL and everything going on. And someone came in that was actually worthy of making the team. Would they recognize that, or are they just kind of going through the motions?
You think he's right, Coach? Would you give walk-ons a chance these days if you were coaching a college team?
Absolutely, and I did coach a college team at Arizona State, and we had some walk-ons make the team. But not only do they make the team, they were given scholarships. How about that? They were given scholarships, and that is big for your football team. When a walk-on guy comes on and he earns a scholarship, you should see the adulation and the joy from all the other guys on the football team. So this needs to be done. This is part of college football.
Coach Herm Edwards, well, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And don't miss my full sit down with Glenn and Eli, where we discuss football, family, and the future, coming up next right here on ABC News Live Prime. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.